What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Talks. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPar11 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole social media gauntlet. Um, another episode back, early June. We've got a little bit of football going on. Practice is essentially helmets and shorts, so it doesn't really matter at all. But um, we got a special guest here, someone who basically tortured the Jets fans for the last probably 13 years or so. Devin McCourty, Football Night in America, Patriots legend. How we doing, man? And brother of Jason McCourty, who's a good friend of the show.
Yeah, man. And it's funny too. You mentioned like just helmets. I used to love this time of the year. We'd be in there and like we're getting better, we're working. And every so often, Bill would come in a meeting. He would go, I mean, you guys think this is real football. Like, this shit isn't real football. We'll see what you can do when we come back for training camp, real football. So it's a reminder as fans. And now, like, I love it. I'm all into it. Let's know what's going on. But it is a reminder, like, this is just kind of glorified two-hand touch out there. So take it
Yeah,
for
no.
what it is.
Listen, every day we're gonna get an Aaron Rodgers clip, at least one or two no look throws, and Dolphins and Patriots fans and Bills fans are gonna say his Achilles looks bad. Jets fans are gonna say he looks good. I want to kind of just talk. We're going to talk some more fun stuff, towards the end. But I want to just talk a little bit of the Jets and the AFC East as a whole, right? I think this division, obviously, as you know, probably better than anybody for a long time was Patriots division. The Jets, had some years there, obviously, where they were good. But generally speaking, you guys win the division pretty much every year. Transition, the Bills have won it the last 5 years, I believe. And Patriots in a rebuild. Dolphins start well and choke kind of seemingly every year. Bills can't get past the Chiefs. And then there's the Jets. And I truly believe, and this is not even a bias thing, this roster on paper is very, very, very good.
Yep.
How do you see this Jets team, and what do you see from Aaron Rodgers this year? I know it's almost a boring question at this point, but I kind of feel like I have to ask.
I mean, it's funny because we just did a Football Night in America podcast yesterday, and I was on with Jason Garrett, and we talked about like biggest questions going into the summer that you're looking forward to of seeing in training camp. And I put Atlanta and the Jets as like two of those teams that the expectations so high that they could have a bad season and it really be a really good season. But you look at Atlanta and they were the team that, like, if they just had a quarterback, like we watched them last year, all of these young, talented guys, then they added more guys. They added Rondell Moore. They added Mooney. So now you're like, okay, and they got Kirk Cousins, like, let's go. And then it's a reminder of like, well, Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles last year. Is this team going to go win the division? And that to me is one level. You look at the Falcons. I think a whole nother level is the Jets because of what Aaron Rodgers has done in this league. But not just that, but the defense, how good this defense has been since Salah came and took over. They've continued to keep this team in games. Last year, when I think the season was dead week one for a lot of people, you looked up at certain parts of the season and was like, well, if we win, 3 out of our next 4 or 5 games, we're going to have a shot to make the playoffs. And that was strictly off the back of the defense of them continuing to go out there, no matter when it was Zach Wilson in there, when it was other guys in there, that was just like a rotating door of different quarterbacks you're thrown in there. So to me, you look at this team and you bring Aaron Rodgers back if he can stay healthy, but then you also add Mike Williams. You also add Tyron Smith from Dallas. So you're looking at the kind of pieces, then you draft the first round tackle. You have all of these guys that now come in on offense, and it's youth, it's some veterans, it's different guys that, to me, you're looking and you're saying, like, these guys should be difference makers for this team. And in this market in New York, New Jersey, it's all in. Like, they want to see a Super Bowl, but that's my biggest fear of this, the expectations being so high that you don't realize, like, hey, if we make it, into the wild card and we make it to a divisional round, like, that's a good year. But when you have a quarterback who's 40, it's like, we got to win right now.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because when Jason was on, I always ask everyone, like, what's fair expectations, right? What's a successful season? And obviously, Super Bowl or bust for every year is a good organization's thinking that way. But
Yep.
for me, I'm thinking if this really is truly a 2-year window, right? Rodgers essentially he's got the 2 years left on the deal. Again, we have no idea. He's also talked about playing 4 more years. I really have no idea what's going to happen. Let's just take it day by day at this point, with him. But if it's really a 2-year window, I think getting a home playoff game, which they have not had since 2002, winning a playoff game and at least like establishing yourself like, hey, you establish this culture where like we're going to be a playoff team, we're a contender. If you go further in that, that's fine. But you look even back at 2008, 2009, 2010, the last time the Jets were good. 2009, they almost arrived a little early,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously, 2010 they come in and it's like a disappointment they didn't win a title. But 2009 was a success, making it to the conference title game. It's a little different now because you don't have a 22-year-old Mark Sanchez like
Mm-hmm.
to make the excuse of. You have a
Yeah.
40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. It's a little different. Are you? Where's your like confidence level? Rodgers is 80-90% of really good Aaron Rodgers. I think 2022 he was. I don't.
Yep.
I guess if you're an anti-Rodgers guy, let's just call it what it is. You're gonna be like, hey, I don't really care about the thumb, and he's 40. He's injured the last 2 years. If you're a pro Rodgers guy, you're like, hey, the arm still looks amazing. He won 2 MVPs in the last 3 years he's played football, and he had a broken thumb and rib injuries, and the Packers kind of sucked in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, where do you fall in that? Are you kind of in the middle? I feel like that's really the reasonable place to be at this point.
I agree 100%. I think, like, before you said that, I was going to say I'm right in the middle because I think there's a reality of age and father time, but I think there's also a reality of what these guys now do to protect their body and to create longevity. The Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's, like, these guys are spending a ton of their own money to make sure they can keep playing. So sometimes we're like, well, we're just waiting for the fall off. It just keeps getting pushed back. Like you look at Brady, he's retired now, and his last game in Tampa, he threw the ball 56 times. So it's like reality is you kind of like, well, the guy could probably still play. And I think for Aaron Rodgers, I think the biggest thing this year is playing the quarterback position at a high level. He doesn't need MVP stats. He doesn't need all of the craziness. I look at Peyton Manning 2015 with that incredible Denver defense. Peyton Manning didn't have the same arm strength. He didn't have the different things because of the neck injuries, but he played quarterback still at a high level. And what he did when there was a minute and 30 left in a game, what he did when they were protecting a 2-score lead, like those to me are the things that they need Aaron Rodgers to be not just good at, to be one of the best at in the league this year of learning and understanding time, situation, game. Like that to me is what you get when you have a 40-year-old quarterback. You get a quarterback who has played in the Super Bowl, who has played in conference championship games, has played in big playoff games, cold games. Like he's done it all. So you need him to always be at his best mentally, what to do with the ball. And I think the biggest thing is what we didn't see in Green Bay was him having the ability to take those young receivers and mold them into what we kind of saw last year from those Green Bay receivers with Jordan Love as we looked up and we were like, damn, like this core group of guys pretty good. And I look at Malachi Corley, you're like, all right, Aaron Rodgers, how can you take him, take Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams? Like, how can you take these young guys and create this just core group that if one guy gets hurt, it doesn't matter because another young guy steps up because you're that good at quarterback. I think that is going to be the difference of how good. I think the Jets are going to be a good football team. Like, not just, hey, they're going to be competitive. I think they're going to be a good football team. I think the division is set up a little bit for them this year where the Bills are kind of not in a rebuild, but they're going through a good amount of change with some of their key players leaving. Miami, I think they're questioning a little bit of what are we? Like, we know we're good, but are we good enough to win in circumstances that don't necessarily fit our needs? Going to Kansas City in January, maybe having to go to New York in January. Like, those are the things I think to Miami. And then New England is New England right now, which is full rebuild, figuring out different things. So it just seems like this is a year that the Jets can kind of come in and be a really good football team and shake something up.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I think the biggest thing for me with just the Jets and keeping guys healthy is keeping the key guys healthy,
Yep.
especially in the offensive side of the football. You mentioned some of the young receivers. I know Jets fans are already going to cringe when I say this, but like Randall Cobb being on the Jets staff is just like, yo, use Malachi Corley the way you guys used me early on in my career. Wouldn't be a bad thing. I don't know if that'll happen, but that's just something that we've talked a lot about. The defensive side of the football, and then I want to kind of go to more broad. You mentioned the AFC East. Sauce has been, if not the best, I think he's been the best corner in football the last 2 years. I'm not sure we've ever really seen a guy come in the NFL at probably one of the 2 or 3 hardest positions in the league right away and just be like, hey, I'm the best dude in the league at this.
Yep.
And he hasn't even taken the football away a lot, which is cool that he has room to actually still grow in his game. A guy like Michael Carter, that the Jets cornerback room to me is something that, linebacker, they have all pros at all three levels on defense, and they have guys that are all in their prime as all pro players. What stands out to you most about this defense? Because again, it's from a scheme perspective, it's not overly complicated. They're going to play a lot of zone. They'll play some man on third downs. They're not going to blitz a ton. I think they only blitzed like they were second or third least in the NFL last year. Blitzing. They kind of they rush four. They do some overload stuff, but other than that, it's just like we're going to drop into 2, 3, and 4 and like beat us. And most teams haven't been able to. What impresses you, I guess, most about that defense?
What I love is what Saleh came from San Francisco, and you just mentioned all pros at every level. When you looked at San Francisco, it was like, this is unfair, right? There's like, all right, we got to deal with Bosa. All right, then we got to deal with Fred Warner. We got to deal with Greenlaw. We got Hufunga. We just have, then they go and get Ward last year. You're like, this isn't fair. Like, they have guys, and then the Jets I don't think they get enough attention for their defense because San Fran has both sides, right? They're always up there because of the guys on offense and defense. They play in the biggest games, so we see that more. The Jets don't get credit, but like you just said, you talk about CJ and Quincy in the middle at linebacker. You look at Quentin Williams up front, and then I think the biggest thing when I was on New England, when we talked about playing the Jets, was you had to be prepared and you had to watch film as an offensive line of all of these guys, because their front four wasn't going to be like four guys who play like 80% and then other guys don't. Like, no, they were going to have 7 to 8 guys that were going to be in critical moments, third down, 2-minute. So you had to watch all 8 of these guys and know what you were getting, because they were all good football players. They all could rush the passer. They were physical. And I think that was, to me, the key of, all right, it's going to be hard to throw the ball outside with Reed and Sauce Gardner being 2 really good corners on the outside. And then Michael Carter has developed into probably one of the best nickel guys in the NFL that fits their style. And to me, now for them is, how healthy is Chuck Clark going to be coming back this year, which I thought was a great pickup for them last year, and he gets hurt. And then they get the emergence of Tony Adams last year. I think that really solidified their safety spot. But now it's like, all right, you need these 2 guys to be what I always see as the safeties is they have to be the guys that make sure everything flows in the back end. The communication from you to the corners to the linebackers, and make sure everything marries up. I think those 2 guys, Tony Adams and Chuck Clark, I think they're going to have to be fantastic this year to show up and really kind of be the 2 spots that solidify this defense to say, hey, we're not just top 3, top 4, like we're the best defense in the NFL. And you talked about just scheme-wise, it's, hey, we're better than you. Across the board, we like our matchups. We're not going to confuse ourselves and try to do and be cute with all these different things, because we don't have to. Like, you're going to struggle to block our 3 technique and Quentin Williams. If he runs through 2 people, you're going to struggle to block him. And I think the key is hopefully everything works out with Hassan Reddick. I think Bryce Huff was amazing last year of having that guy come off the edge. And I think they kind of decided, hey, we're going to trade him because the value of what we're going to have to pay him, we don't really like. And then you get Hassan Reddick, and then he's like, well, I have 1 year left on my deal.
I got no guaranteed money. Money
so it's like, I wonder if they kind of look and they're like, damn, maybe we should have just given that money. But I understand for them. Like, you draft McDonald last year. Like, you continue to invest in the front. And it's like, we can't keep giving all our money to where we're already really good at. So hopefully that works out with him, and they get, whether it's this year or an extension, they get something done that at least if they can get him in this year, it's like, hey, this solidifies what we want to do this year.
Yeah, I think the parameters for a Reddick extension make sense, right? I think Danielle Hunter just got 2 for 49.5 or 2 for 49, basically fully guaranteed. Same age, similar production. If I'm the Jets, I'm like, we'll beat it by $1 million. That's the way these things work. Agents just want to be able to say we got the next most. To me, I think that's one of those you want to get done during camp. I'd love to see them try to extend Michael Carter as well. That nickel market is only going to get more expensive. There's just not a lot of guys that are really good at that spot. You look at Teron Johnson, you look at some of these other guys. Dude from Indianapolis it's blanking in my head.
Kenny Moore.
Kenny Moore. So it's like there's not a lot of these dudes that are like legit can play 3 downs, because a lot of these guys can't tackle or they can't cover. So it's that way. You mentioned the safety room. I think the biggest key for the Jets safety room this year is to limit like the negative plays. I thought Jordan Whitehead was a little too boomer bust last year. Thought he
Mhm.
made some really nice plays, but then at times like try to pop somebody with his shoulder. It happened against you guys 2 years ago. It happened last year a few times where it's like, bro, you can't really big hit Damian Harris in the hole in the A gap. Like it's not going to work. And then it pops for a 60-yard run, and all of a sudden your back's against the wall where you can't make
Yeah, yeah.
mistakes. So I wanted to ask you just about, look, you grew up in the area. You obviously had a lot of success against the Jets, and like, what was, I guess, what was the mentality going into a lot of those games? Because I felt like it became very mental until last year. That like that's why I argued with people for weeks last year. The Jets had to go in and try to beat New England last year. I know it would hurt their draft pick, whatever. You cannot go into another year of like, hey, we haven't beaten them in 20 fucking years in New England and the whole thing, right? Like, it was a mental thing. You saw CJ Mosley like talk about it avidly. He's like, we have got to win this game. And like, I understand the draft pick stuff and it doesn't really matter, but it does matter. Do you feel like that has became so mental at one point? I know the roster, because the rosters were not always like so few and far. They were
Well, there
close.
was
You guys
there
were
was
close at times.
at the end of my career. I mean, honestly, the Jets roster was probably better than our roster
Yeah,
at times.
2022 in New England,
Like
that was tough.
there was like you look, yeah, like Marcus takes the punt return back to end the game, and you kind of look at that game and you're like, this
How did we
team
just win that game?
this team as bad as an offense that you're gonna play all year for the Jets, and it's like we hold them to 3 points all game. Like we're in this 3-3 game, and it's like this is. And I thought last year was the main indicative that like the Patriots were one of the worst teams in football last year. They won 4 games, and you look up and you're like, well, one thing we can guarantee, like one of the wins is against the Jets, and you look at that and you don't want to be a team where like this one team, no matter how bad they are, they always know there's 2 wins against us. And to me, they played the Patriots now at the end of the year where the first time they played them, they got a win, but the Patriots, like their season didn't already go downhill. At the end of the year, it's like, all right, now this team, we get it. We're not going anywhere. We're not good right now either. But there were times, like we said, there were times during the season where the Jets had a chance. And this is with multiple quarterbacks playing. I can't think of the last quarterback that played. We called the
Trevor Simeon.
but not Trevor before Trevor
Oh,
Simeon.
Tim Boyle.
Yes.
It's just
And
disaster.
we're just looking at the college stats and we're like, how's this guy even in the NFL? Like this looks crazy. But then you looked up and you're like, they're in the game. Like they have a chance to win. Like the Black Friday game we called on Westwood One Radio, the Jets they're kind of in control of the game. They get back-to-back interceptions, and then the Hail Mary gets picked off by Javon Holland, and he scores. And it flipped the whole game. So then you play New England at the end of the year, and it's like, hey, this offense has scored. They've lost to the Chargers 6-0. Like they're as bad as an offense we're gonna play maybe in the next like 5 years. We can't lose to this outfit. So I think and that happens not just with like a mentality. I think a culture shift. I think new blood. I think these younger guys who are now on the Jets team, they don't care about what Brady did the last 15 years at New England. They're like, that's long gone. Like I watched that when I was in middle school. Like that's irrelevant to me. This is us now. Like we're the Jets. This is Jet Life Stadium. Like all of these things that I think they fully believe in. And I think what CJ Moses probably spoke about is that's cool to believe in it. We have to go do it. And them doing that at the end of the year should make them feel like they should come in and say, hey, the teams for us to beat now, Buffalo and Miami. New England has to be, their mentality should be New England has to be a guaranteed 2 wins that we get in our division. Now we have to see, can we go get 2 against Buffalo and can we get 2 against Miami to now talk about winning the division, home field playoff game. Like that's what the things you have to start to believe in and do. And it doesn't mean you don't prepare. Like, when you play New England, it's going to be tough. No matter what their record is or what goes on, this game is going to be tough because it was the same way when the Jets record wasn't good and we would have to play them. We knew it was going to be a tough fought game, but we knew we had to throw the knockout blow. And I think they have to have that mentality going into the season.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think this year the difference in who wins the AFC East is who slips up against New England. Again, maybe New England catches fire and they become the Texans of last year, and Drake May hits the ground running, and we have a different
I'll
conversation.
be all for that.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm going to ask you one question that I know Jets fans are going to hate, but I'm going to ask you anyways. You guys obviously you were part of the Darnold stuff. You were part of you. I'm not sure if Zach Wilson thought you were on the Jets at points. Like I'm genuinely like I'm kind of half joking, obviously, but what what do you think was a majority of that? You think it was? I know we talked about some of the mental side, right? And there's all the culture, and I think there is like an aspect of Bill scared a lot of quarterbacks into not making a mistake, and then you end up making a mistake. Um, the ghost games, in particular, and then 2020, I guess it was 2021 or 2022. You know, when you guys came to the Jets, it was maybe 2021. No, 2022, right? They were 6-2. You guys came in. You guys were kind of teetering in that like, are we going to be a playoff team? Are we not? And that there was just it was 10-3. The pick six doesn't happen. It gets called back. And then like Zach's brain broke. And I don't know what happened, but like, can you just walk me through why you felt like you guys had so much success against specifically Jets young quarterbacks and you yourself, like, was it you guys just like fooling coverages? What happened? Because it was like, I'm like, dude, you can't possibly throw this ball. Like, what are you doing? And it just kept happening over and over again over multiple quarterbacks.
Yeah, man, I think the genius of Bill was understanding what type of quarterback we were playing. I think as players, when you're in the NFL, I'm going to watch the film. I'm going to see all of that. But I think the aspect that Bill, to me, is so great at is he can give you the full picture of, I don't know what Zach Wilson looked like at BYU. I didn't watch Zach Wilson at BYU. Bill comes in, and if Zach Wilson spins out and he loops around and he throws the ball, Bill will come and tell you, like, this isn't like a young guy just trying to make plays because he's in the NFL. Like, this is who he was. And he'll tell you, like, this is at BYU. He rolled around, he made plays.
Bailed out of clean pockets.
Like, he was like, we watched that. We've seen that. Like, this is who he is. So, like, this is what we need to do in the games where he does this the most. It's because pressure comes up the middle and pressure comes to his right side. So he has to spin out, go left, and then he still thinks he can make that play. So, like, how can we force him in those situations more and more and more? And then we're going to create bad plays that come. And then if one bad play happens, it's a trickle-down effect, because usually when you have a top 5 pick and you draft a quarterback, you usually don't have much leadership from a player standpoint on that side of the ball because you're struggling a little bit. So there's no one to now come and say, hey, man, like, we're good. Just settle down. Let's do different things. And it was the same thing with Darnold and his young career. It was like, all right, we have to create the illusion of there's always a lot of guys coming. And that game, the Monday night game that went, viral, of like the seeing ghosts and nonsense, was we had a lot of different fronts where we had all 11 guys within 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. So as a young quarterback, you don't know who's blitzing. You don't know if they're all getting out of there. And that was a package we developed, especially for a young quarterback that was trying to take on a good amount of things. Le'Veon Bell's there, the Jets' pressure of being in New York, like understanding all of those different things that have nothing to do with the actual X's and O's of football was something that I thought Bill could give us on a Wednesday. And by Sunday, it has so many different layers, and it showed up in our game plan so much. But I think the hardest thing is when you're continually drafting top 5 over and over again, and like Mark Sanchez, then like, all right, that doesn't work out. All right, we're going to go Sam Darnold. Oh, that doesn't work out. All right, we're going to Zach. Well, like, these quarterbacks never get to come into healthy, good situations. There's usually a new head coach. And if there's not a new head coach, there's a new offensive coordinator. It's just so many kind of things that are just rolling along. And I think what the Jets have done the best right now is saying, how can we just say, like, let's just stick this out and go. And I, like, last year when people were like, certain fans were like, they should fire Salah, like, this isn't working. I'm just like, really? Like, this team is missing the one piece that they went and got. If I'm a fan, I'm sitting there like, we need a quarterback. Like, all right, we drafted Zach Wilson. It didn't work out. We need a guy. And your team goes and gets Aaron Rodgers. You got to be excited. You don't expect the 4th play of the season you're going to lose this guy. So I think that's the hardest thing. I think Drake May, New England will go through it right now. Buffalo went through it with Josh Allen. Like there's a growing period of these young guys come into situations that are just not ideal. And Jason Garrett has taught me that the burden put on a young quarterback or any quarterback is something we have to look at. Like some of these guys, Brady's, the Drew Breeses, the Aaron Rodgers later in the career, they were able to take that burden. Patrick Mahomes now is able to take the burden of no matter who's on offense, but it wasn't always like that for him. And I think that's the thing we have to always look at with young quarterbacks. And if you break down the Jets' young quarterbacks through the years, there's always been a lot of burden on those guys, whether it's been the offensive line hasn't been up to par, you haven't had the right receivers. Like it's always been something that they've had to overcome, which to me is really hard to do as any young player, especially at the quarterback position.
Yeah, look, I think you mentioned it there with with Zach especially, and I think that same thing happened with Sam obviously as well, but just not being able to identify, especially who's coming and who's not, and if you don't have a veteran offensive line or the strongest offensive line, communication's off, then you start panicking, bailing out of clean pockets. I just vividly remember that game in 2022 where early on in the game, he bailed from a clean pocket and hit Garrett for a big play. And it was like, and at one point you're kind of like happy. And you're
But
also like,
you know
you're
it's
like,
going to keep
fuck,
coming up
because
now.
you're going to keep, now you're going to keep doing it. You've seen success.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of where you almost watch guys. It's kind of a, Bill kind of, I feel like it's very much like a baseball thing too. You want to set guys up, in the batter's box, and it's like, all right, like maybe first pitch he's going to swing at this. Now, like I know he's looking this the
Pandora's
whole game.
box is open.
Then, yeah, it's open. So,
but that's a good point you made, because I think of when I think of like Mark Sanchez and the games that we played against the Jets when they were good. If you ever go back and look, there's so much with Mark Sanchez talking and then Nick Mangold not shutting them up, but like saying no. Yeah. Here, but point and like we used to talk about that. Like Nick Mangold was in charge of what we used to call the mic point. He got the line going, and you know how much stress that takes off a young quarterback. Like, and I think that's something that they have to try to build for, which is not. It's not, I would say, particularly pretty to your fan base when you go and you get offensive linemen and you get young guys that'll play on the offensive line that can always be there and show up. It's not pretty, but when you have that, it's a world of difference for your team being a good football team.
Yeah, 100%. You just look back at these guys, veteran centers, and Aaron Rodgers has always hated young centers. Like Brady, I wasn't in the building with Brady, but I can tell you there's no way Brady was like, "Yay, a rookie center." Because
David Andrews will tell you some very
they don't know
story.
what they're doing either. Like, center is not easy. And you mentioned it there. I want to. We're getting into some fun stuff. Obviously, again, 2010, right? You're a rookie. Obviously, had an unbelievable rookie year. Going into being a local dude, Rutgers as well. You're right down the street from MetLife. Well, not really down the street, down I-95, the Jersey Turnpike. Were you like back of your head, hey, I hope I end up with one of the local teams? I mean, I know the Patriots are somewhat local, but did you embrace, like, how quickly did you embrace, like, I'm going to kind of low-key be a villain here and come back and
the Patriots are a team I did not want to go to. Like when we were in college, Shiano used to always go up to New England. He developed a relationship with Coach Belichick, and he would always come back with like these New England sayings and like make us work harder. So I was like, man, I don't want to end up there. And it's funny, like going through the process, taking a local visit to the Jets facility and sitting down with Rex, and at that time, Dennis Thurman was a DB coach, and like we watched film, we watched Revis and we watched Cromartie, and their biggest thing was like with these guys, like we go everything by matchup. So like you would be the third corner, those two guys would get a guy, and you would get a guy. And for me, playing at Rutgers in the Big East, we used to play against Pitt every year. Like we all looked up to Reeve. Like Revis was the guy when he got drafted high and then he went to the Jets and was balling. It was like, man, like as a young college kid, I'm like, man, I'd go to the Jets. I would get to play with Revis. It would be cool. So I actually thought there was a chance. Like when at the end of the draft, New England drafts me 27. The team that I was looking for once it got to that point was the Jets were at 29. I thought that was my last chance to be a first rounder. Was like a lot of people believe that the Jets were going to draft me if I was available at 29. So, but again, once I went to New England, like it was for me, it was awesome knowing that once a year.
You hit the jet plane celebration coming
So,
after receptions. Come on now.
I loved it. Like I knew once a year I was going to get to go back and play in New Jersey. And, I like my last game in New Jersey. I remembered I had 2 interceptions, gave both balls because I knew I was like, this is probably going to be my last time playing here. And like unbelievable feeling because I loved that. I loved, I went to high school in New Jersey, stayed home, went to Rutgers, not because like I wanted to, it was my only offer. Like I didn't get to be one of those top guys in New Jersey, but like to end my career and to, like, again, I love being in this area, but it was always a special feeling knowing like my boys who are Jets fans, like my boys, I would get tickets. They would come to the game and have all their Jets gear on. And after the game, I would be like, we were going to whoop your team. Like I love that. So it was a lot of fun. I've run into Mark Sanchez a bunch of times and we've laughed and joked about him running and doing the jet right at me when they beat us in the playoffs my rookie year. So it was always fun for me. Like I loved kind of being that villain to the Jets and always like the Rutgers fans that would be Jets fans that would be at the game. So it was some special times.
Yeah, 7 interceptions against the Jets in 25 games. No, that's fine, man. No, and in terms of, obviously a lot of stuff was kind of talked about that, the New England dynasty, obviously there was a lot that kind of went on. I mean, Jason talked about this when he was on, just like there was a lot of really cool stuff I thought about the docu-series or however you want to phrase it. I thought some of it was a little petty on both sides of Bill and Robert Kraft. I'm not going to ask you to go into that stuff, but in terms of the doc as a whole, was there anything that surprised you watching? I don't know if you got a chance to watch it back. Was there anything that surprised you of, hey, I actually have never seen that before. This was super interesting, or like, I know there was some stuff where you guys kind of felt like, hey, I've sat down for 5 hours and you took 12 seconds of what I said. But generally outside of that, was there anything that kind of surprised you? I thought some of the Aaron Hernandez stuff was way more than I had seen get talked about with, Brandon Lloyd and Welker and some of these guys. I know there's some Welker stuff that didn't get in there. Generally, other than that, was there anything else that stood out or is that kind of one of the big things?
Nah, for me, it was the stuff that happened before I got there, like that first kind of dynasty stuff, that first group of guys, because I didn't know that stuff. So even like the Bledsoe and Brady stuff of realizing, like I was so young back then of, Bledsoe gets hurt and this young guy comes in and he's playing well, but then he gets hurt and Bledsoe comes in.
I forgot they almost re-benched Brady. That blocked out of my brain entirely.
Yeah. So I'm watching that and I'm like, as a head coach, you're paying Bledsoe, your owner's paying him $100 million contract and Brady's winning. So it's all good. But then he gets hurt and Bledsoe comes in the AFC and wins the game. I'm thinking like, hey, we go back to Bledsoe and like the biggest game. So like the balls to be like, you know what? We're going back to this 6th round pick that we drafted. And it's not like when Brady came in, it was like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was kind of some struggling points. It was always clutch moments for the guy. Like that's one thing that sticks out his whole career of when, it's a minute and change or 2 minutes left. He always seems to be at his best. But like that to me was one of the things that stuck out of like, this guy really decided to go with Brady and really put his whole coaching career on that because he had got fired previously in Cleveland. And then now you're here. If this doesn't work out, like, I don't know if you're still probably coaching. So it was kind of cool seeing that. But yeah, I think a lot of the stuff, like when I was there, was just interesting. It was like, even like you brought up the Hernandez stuff was because Brandon Lloyd was there for a year. So I'm watching a documentary.
I was pretty confused. I honestly forgot he was on the Patriots. And like, I feel like I'm pretty smart. I honestly forgot he was there.
And he had a hell of a year. The one year he was there, like 900 yards. But I'm like, this guy can't speak on this situation. He was there for a year. So, but I think there was some things like, I know that for me, that topic was, I was like, I don't have background information on this. Like, I'm not going to talk about a situation where I'm just kind of assuming some things or trying to piece things together after other events have happened. I never thought that was fair. So I've always kind of stayed out of that. But yeah, man, it was intense. And I think it was funny, just some of the things that transpired and what ended up coming out. Some of the guys that even like Peyton Manning supposedly sat down for like hours and then
nothing in there.
And then he got nothing in there. So, but again, for me, it was cool just seeing the years of something that I never thought I would be a part of. Like I watched that first part as a young kid, as a high schooler, And then to think like it kept going and I got to have a part in that back half was pretty cool just to sit down and watch that.
Yeah, it's funny. I always talk about like as a kid, the 98, 99, 2000 Rams are like by far my like second favorite team. Like
Mhm.
I literally love those teams. I thought there was like it's a cool story. It's just crazy that the way
Yep.
it all kind of blew up. And I just remember being like, this is going to be. I'm like 5 or 6 years old. I'm like, this is going to be a disaster. Like I just know it. You mentioned some of the stuff there with only one serious question. Not semi-serious, but we talk about Rodgers so much, and I think his political stuff. And I know he talks a lot, so I'm not saying he's a victim in this in any way, shape, or form. But I feel like we talk about it every day, and it's like the number one story is Aaron Rodgers believes in this, and he's going to vote for this person. Half the time, I don't think he really says what he's doing. He just kind of like throws shit at the
Just
wall, and
talks. Yep.
yeah, just talks. You talked a lot about it, and a lot of you guys talked about it. Where it was just there was a lot of that 2018, 2019, et cetera stuff, or 2016. I apologize with the Trump stuff, and there was a bunch of stuff with Brady and Belichick and Robert Kraft and the locker room more comparatively. Are you surprised in any way, shape, or form that it feels like Rodgers gets a lot more coverage? Is it just because he talks more about it, where Brady kind of just like identified with it but didn't say anything? I'm just confused on how. I know you guys talked a lot about like, hey, everything was about keeping it in the building, and then like that kind of didn't get kept in the building with that letter and all that stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you see any differences or similarities in the two things, or are they just totally different stuff?
Well, no, to me, like that, like if you just compare Brady to Rodgers, it's that Brady. If you just look, Brady doesn't talk about any of that stuff. Like if he's friends with,
He just does it, and that's what it is.
yeah,
What it
if
is.
he's friends with somebody that is seen as controversial, like you won't hear him talking about that publicly. You won't really see him with that person public. Like, it is just he. I think Brady does something for himself that like he wants his personal life and what he feels pretty like he wants that all to be separate. Like he doesn't want to sit and talk about that stuff with everybody. And that to me is like one thing. And I don't think one's good or one's bad. Like I have no problem with Aaron Rodgers being out and vocal. I think you always just have to remember when you're going to be vocal about stuff, it's always going to impact your teammates and the different things. And I was somebody that was vocal about different things. And I understood that, hey, I want to take this to a point where I want all the attention to come back and questions to come back to me and not force my teammates to have to answer and talk about things strictly because of me. So I think that's the thing that you always have to kind of balance when you're doing team sports is that you can be outspoken about certain topics, but you always want to try to balance and not put your teammates in awkward situations. So I actually think what Aaron Rodgers does talking about the US government or different things. Like to me, generally, that stuff has all come back to him. Like anything he says is people ask him questions. They go back to him. Like, why does he feel this way? It doesn't come on his teammates. So I don't think there's an issue with that. For me, I'm like some of the things he talks about, I wouldn't want to have to talk about over and over again. But as long as he's comfortable with that and he's into it, he's passionate about it. I think as athletes, we get a certain platform. People might not like it that people will listen to Aaron Rodgers or what he has to say, but because he throws a football well, and our society is really obsessed with kind of celebrities and different things like that. Then hey, A-Rod, go do your thing. Like for me, I've never had an issue with that.
Yeah, it's just funny. He's at a UFC fight the other weekend. He's talked about he doesn't like Trump. Then he posted a picture of Trump, and then it's a huge deal if he didn't shake his hand. Then he
Yeah, I
did shake
saw
his
like he
hand.
didn't supposedly shake it. Yeah,
Yeah, and then he posted a picture shaking his hand because everyone got mad that he didn't shake his hand. The whole thing is wild. I done a couple fun ones here. I would probably rank Stephon Gilmore of games you've played in. Stephon Gilmore in the Super Bowl's probably got to be top 3 or 4 best performances individually. Are any other ones come to mind for you? I think I've talked about that on this podcast plenty of times because a lot of similarities with him and Revis and even him and Sauce in a lot of ways. Other than that performance, is there other ones that kind of come to mind of like, it could be yourself too, but ones that are like, hey, throughout my career, like this was nuts playing in this game. You were just like, this is different.
Vince Wilfork, 2011 against Baltimore. We played 3-4 defense, and he moved from nose guard to end just to be able to rush over Michael Orr.
Yeah.
Right? Is that
Yeah, Michael.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, tortured the dude all game. Like it was one of the best performances as a young player, seeing our best defensive lineman say, Coach, move me to end. Like I wanna rush on this guy. I want to kill him in the run game. And it was special. That I think you said Gilmore, but Gilmore season in 2019 was as impressive of anything I've seen. And then Revis, the 1 year he was with us in 14, was for me, it was so cool to see.
Playing a different scheme too, something he wasn't. I mean, I guess more New England, but like even when he went to Tampa too, it's a totally different thing than he was doing with the
New
Jets.
England was different because like we were like, hey, like this guy's really fucking good. Hey, you're good. Reeve, I'm gonna tell you, hey, you're just over there, you got him. Go. So like we were able, that was like the time in my career where I learned of like, all right, when you have somebody that's rare, you do different things. And I had Talib, and Talib was a guy that he could go one-on-one and just be on his own. But Talib loved the X's and O's of the game. How can I jump a route? How can I understand, hey, I'm going to let this guy go because he's going into your area and I'm going to come off and rob something. So Talib, even though he would do that, he didn't live for that because he's like, you don't get interceptions for that. Talib like getting the ball in his hands and going and trying to get pick sixes. I think he has like 10 or something pick six. I think he's top 10 or top 5 all time with that. So I got to play with him and then Revis and then Gilmore. Revis and Gilmore were a lot similar of put us on a guy, leave us alone. We don't really care about the scheme, the X's and O's, and anything you're doing in there. We just want to cover a guy. So, yeah, I've seen those guys have some special performances. And then the next guy I would throw in there was Jamie Collins. Would have some games where I was just like, dude, you're a freak.
Was Jamie Collins the cupcakes for the Jets? Is it? I might have been Jamie Collins. If it was, that's just brutal. That might be. Was it Jamie Collins? Who was it?
That what?
I don't remember if it was Jamie. I gotta find this. So one of the Jets. Yeah. Oh, it's Dante Hightower. Never mind. When the Jets, he was a free agent.
Oh yeah.
The cupcakes.
Yep. He was thinking about it.
That was bad. Nah, it's Gilmore and Revis are two like special breed of shit talking too. Like they're kind of like
don't talk, but talk on the field.
Don't talk, but then they talk under their breath a little bit, and you're like, "What'd you just say?"
Yep.
What was that?
Yep. Two of the most competitive, quiet guys I've ever been around.
Yeah, no, they're just funny. There's a lot of guys that are loud. You can think of like people, even like Jets guys like Bart Scott. Revis was direct, obviously, like doesn't say anything, and then all of a sudden like hits you with something. And you're like, excuse me, like what'd you just? Last 3 here. These are rapid fire. Obviously, best. What's your go-to? Are you like a breakfast sandwich guy? I mean, I know you've been here basically your whole life. Like, did you enjoy the Taylor ham, egg, and cheese, Mike Williams stuff? Like, what'd you make of that?
bacon, egg, and cheese guy.
Sausage, egg, and cheese guy.
Nowhere else in this country can you come and get a bagel and a breakfast sandwich like New York and New Jersey. It's maybe Connecticut. I've never spent time in Connecticut, but like everywhere else I've been, it's heartbreaking of trying to get a breakfast sandwich. It's just not good. It's not real eggs, or like now living back here full time. Like I go there like two or three times a week just to get a breakfast sandwich. I love it.
Pizza and best dinner spot. Like, what's your go-to in the city? Either pizza, go to dinner with your wife, your kid. Like, where's your like spot where you're like, yo, when you come here, you got to go to this spot?
We love in the city. We love Hunt and Fish Club, right in like Midtown. I actually just was at Quality Meats last night with a friend. Yeah, I mean, I would say like Hunt and Fish Club is like one of our little like kind of not small spots, but like one of our go-to spots that like every time we go there, we have a good time. Like we really enjoy going there, me and my wife.
Last one here. Is Rutgers? Are you excited about the Rutgers, the introduction of the Pac-12 guys? I'm a USC guy, unfortunately, so USC at Iowa and at Rutgers is going to feel pretty weird. But are you excited about like the way there's? I mean, I know NC 25 is coming out and all these different things. At least you got to be in the games, you know. At least you got the tail end.
I am, and I'm always somewhat jealous of like, man, I would have loved to get a shot to play like in the Big Ten against all these like big time schools and like go to some of these stadiums that these guys have gone to. But yeah, I think it's cool for like you just said, you're a USC guy, and normally like you got to always travel far to go. Like you you could go to Rutgers when they play and check out your favorite team. So, but I'm excited for, I think, Rutgers. I think they did a good job. I think Shiano kept a lot of guys here that didn't jump in the portal. With Manungai coming back and not opting to go to the NFL at the running back position. So I'm excited for this team. They got a new quarterback from the portal that supposedly had a good spring and can maybe help and take off. So it's fun, I think, now as a retired player of like being able to dive back into your school and really try to watch more college football and different things like that. But yeah, I think Rutgers is good for this area. You obviously know, being in this area, the times that, when we were there and we had some success with Ray Rice.
Jersey football is legit. People sleep on it. It is very legit.
I was talking to Rutgers AD, and he was like, the funniest thing said, when I first got this job, people would come up to me like, hey, all you need to do is like keep the Jersey talent here. And he was like, thanks. Like that was the one thing I didn't think of. And he was like, we all know that. We know that for years. Like, we get it. We're trying to keep them here. So if they could get an upset or two next year, I think that's what it takes to convince the guys to say, hey, we can make this team a powerhouse and be like these other schools who they go out there and kill it, but they kill it with guys from the state. Look at Georgia, Alabama, like they keep those guys, so I'm excited for them.
Yeah, no, I remember my brother was a junior or senior in high school, and he was getting recruited. And like, they had all the Metro teams, which is Jersey and New York,
yep.
and whatever, had all their commitments on there. And I'm like, at the time, I was playing in New York and Jersey. I'm looking at them like Bama, Georgia, Notre Dame. I'm like, wait, what? Jersey's that legit? And then you really, really look into it. It's crazy. But obviously, appreciate you taking some time. I will make sure that Jason knows you were better. And
I was about to say, that's all that matters. Was I better than Jay?
Yeah. You listen. He didn't say he wanted to be a Jet, so that's all that matters. But appreciate you obviously taking some time. Obviously, everyone kind of knows where to find you, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Yeah, man. Let's go Jets, right? Jet.
I'm gonna have to clip that. That's brutal. You don't want that on your resume.
I'll be there Thursday night football. New England playing against the Jets early. I'll have normal clothes on, but underneath I'll have my Patriots shirt. So if they win, I'll just pull it up and walk through MetLife Stadium.
And if not, I will be posting that right after. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
All right, man. Have a good one.